Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carpenter, and with me is Andreas Christoforidis. Thank you for joining our webinar for ISO 27001 and 27002 with the new version of 2022 and what you need to know. What we'll do today is go through the agenda. This is the agenda. We'll do welcome and introductions. Then we'll discuss the various 27002 areas that are new. There's a special slide called Things to Ponder or Areas to Consider, and then we'll hold all questions and answers at the end. I do want to point out that it's an extensive webinar. We're probably going to go a little fast because there's a lot of detail. So if we don't get all of your questions, then please enter them into the chat box, and we'll get to you after the fact. For the introductions, my name is Carl Carpenter. I'm a former CISO for a $6 billion company, as well as an auditor and a penetration tester. Currently, I'm a cybersecurity consultant for Arrakis Consulting, where I deal with all sorts of regulatory environments, with CMMC being the current hot item. I'm also a PECB certified trainer for ISO 27001, 27032, and CMMC. And I'm also here with my very good friend, Andreas.
Thank you very much, Carl. Hello, everyone. My name is Andreas Christoforidis. I'm also a PCB certified trainer for ISO 27001, 22301, and GDPR, and currently the business developer manager of BY Cyprus. An active auditor as well, where this year was really exciting, really interesting. Since we got involved in a lot of implementations for ISO 27001 frameworks, especially in the maritime industry. Although cybersecurity on board ships has been around for some years now, the new regulations today are moving towards the ISO 27K family, and hopefully soon we will also see the certifications to be mandatory in that area as well for IMO and beacon regulations in shipping industry. So moving further, what is ISO 27001? So ISO 27001 is one of the most popular information security standards in existence today. Protecting personal records and commercially sensitive information is critical. It sets out the specification for an information security management system. They're all well known to us, ISMS. An ISMS is a holistic approach to secure the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability, the desired triad of corporate information assets. So an ISO 27001 ISMS consists of policies, procedures, and other controls involving people, processes, and technology. To meet these requirements, organizations today must definitely conduct a gap analysis, discuss about the scope of ISMS, perform risk assessments, conduct staff awareness trainings, assess, review, and conduct an internal audit, and so on. ISO 27002, this standard is the reference handbook for selecting controls for use within an ISMS based on ISO 27001. It can also be used as a guidance document for an organization wishing to implement commonly accepted information security controls, and these controls are also listed in Annex A of ISO 27001, which is what you'll often see information security experts refer to when discussing information security controls. However, whereas Annex A simply outlines each control is one of two sentences, so ISO 27002 dedicates an average of 1 page per control. We'll let you, Carl, to walk you through with differences and the new changes for ISO 27002.
Thanks, Andreas. The main differences between 27001 and 27002 is that there's much more detail in 27002. in relation to how to do something, or much more guidance on how to implement a specific control. There's also some other differences as well. So for example, a company can certify against 27001, but not 27002. However, certifying against 27001 without proper implementation of 27002 will be extremely difficult. The other area is the applicability. So in 27001, a company would determine what areas are applicable to the company in relation to becoming certified. So for example, for this physical security requirement, if a company is entirely remote and cloud-based, then there may be no need to have some sort of physical security controls, which would be detailed in 27002. So in relation to the specific changes of the new version of 27002, is that we went from 114 controls in 14 clauses to 93 controls in the new version. And the controls are now broken up into categories such as organizational, people, physical, technological, and so on. So another way of looking at people, process, technology. And the new controls that are listed on the slide: threat intelligence, information security in cloud services, ICT readiness for business continuity, physical security monitoring, configuration management, information deletion, data masking, data leakage prevention, monitoring services, web filtering, secure coding. And then there's also the removal of control, which was the removal of assets, which only makes sense in today's dynamic environment with companies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andreas for threat intelligence.
Threat intelligence. Thank you very much, Carl. 5.7, the new control from ISO 27002. Threat intelligence is information an organization uses to understand the threats that will or are currently targeting the organization. This information is used to prepare, prevent, and identify cyber threats looking to take advantage of valuable resources. The great unknown can be exciting in many situations, but in a world where any number of cyber threats could bring an organization to its knees, can be downright terrifying. Threat intelligence can help organizations gain valuable knowledge about these threats, build effective defense mechanisms, and mitigate the risks that could damage their bottom line and reputation. After all, targeted threats require targeted defense, and cyber threat intelligence delivers the capability to defend more proactively. Strategic threat intelligence provides a high level of information on the cybersecurity posture threats, financial impact of cyber activities, attack trends, and their impact of business decisions. The information obtained can be used by senior executives at a company, such as a CISO. And the purpose of the strategic threat intelligence is to manage existing cyber risks and unknown future risks. This intelligence offers a risk-based approach. Of course, it focuses on the effects and possibilities of risks. Operational intelligence is knowledge about cyber attacks. It's knowledge about events or campaigns. It gives specialized insights that help incident response teams understand the nature, intent, and timing of specific attacks. Because this usually includes technical information like what attack vector is being used, what vulnerabilities are being exploited, or what command and control domains are being employed. This kind of intelligence is also referred to as technical threat intelligence. A common source of technical information is threat data feeds, which usually focus on a single type of indicator like malware hashes or suspicious domains. Handing the ball to Carl. Carl?
Thank you. So in relation to, additionally in relation to threat intelligence, we also have tactical threat intelligence, which is essentially the tactics, techniques, and procedures, otherwise known as TTPs, of the threat actor in how they're going to perform an attack or be a bad actor against your company. Quite often you can get this information on TTPs by being involved in various security groups, interacting with government cybersecurity agencies, and so on. But then we also have the technical threat intelligence, which would be based on indicators of compromise. And this is a very vague term, indicators of compromise, because it could be based on the hash of a file, it could be based on the activity of an application, it could be based on a variety of things. And then the indicators of compromise could be a part of quite a few platforms that are already currently in use in your companies. So for example, if you have an IDS, IPS, or something, or next-gen firewall, you most likely already have some sort of threat intelligence in this area. And then, of course, technical threat intelligence tends to be utilized certainly in malware research and detection. So viruses are easier to be detected by that indicator of compromise. And we'll move on to the next slide. So also in relation to the new additions to the 27002 is information for security for cloud services. Obviously, with today's landscape, with COVID, everybody's working remote, things like that. There's more and more opportunities for companies to use cloud services. In addition, that most companies were considering using or actually using cloud services far before COVID even happened, simply to reduce the physical security footprint of their IT technology that was on-prem. So if you are a company that is using cloud services of some sort, it's extremely important that you understand the legality of the cloud services in use, and that the cloud provider understands completely in relation to what the responsibilities are. So you may be able to offload some responsibility for cloud services, but you can't offload accountability for cloud services. And a good example is if you're using, if you have PII of some sort and you're using a cloud provider, say box.com, and you're sending HIPAA data or using HIPAA data and it's in box.com, you should make sure that you sign the HIPAA release form with Box, for example. So understand completely that anything in relation to the use of cloud services, you still have to consider the security of that as well. And obviously everybody knows there's multiple versions of cloud. We can have public cloud, we can have a private cloud, we can also have a hybrid between the two. So public cloud would be like Google. You could also implement your own private clouds if you chose to, such as Nextcloud or something like that, or you could have a combination of the two. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andreas.
Thank you very much, Carl. According to ISO 27002, we have the ICT readiness for business continuity that falls under the ISO 22301 as well. It goes without saying that COVID-19 has disrupted these years on a global scale. While we'll all be affected in different ways, businesses of all types and sizes have taken a huge hit. When situations like COVID-19 happens, a business continuity plan is vital in order for organizations to protect themselves and their employees while keeping the business running as normal. Well, now more than ever, business continuity planning has been high up on every company's list. None expected that COVID-19 and the effects it has on the world. A global pandemic was probably not included in many business lists of scenarios, but this unprecedented has taught us to be more prepared and to consider every area, no matter how big we are, no matter how huge the organization is. So business continuity is a company's ability to maintain or quickly resume its functions and practices during and after a disaster has occurred. This is done by having plans. This is done by having scenarios and procedures in place that aim to prevent these kinds of disruptions and unpredictable events. These events range from environmental disruptions, cyber attacks, network outrages, and yes, even global pandemics like COVID-19. This planning is known as business continuity planning. So business continuity planning is the process of creating systems of prevention and recovery to deal with threats or disasters. These are in place within business so that company stays up and running during a potential problem, and employees and clients are always protected. Diagram shows giving you a rough idea of how planning comes into play and affects the business. So why do we need one? Why do we need a business continuity? Well, COVID has thrown this commonly asked question into the shade: we'll cope, we'll always do, or it won't happen to us. We all heard that so many times. These are easy things to say and think when a disaster doesn't seem to be on the horizon. These are just a couple of frequent responses from businesses who don't have a BCP. They don't have a BCP in place, or they don't even plan it to have in place a BCP plan in place. Disasters have no boundaries, whether you're a startup, whether you're a large or corporation. So understand, manage, and assess any risks. Whether a disaster is happening or not, it's going to be prepared with a plan for how your business is going to react. Having a BCP helps you to anticipate certain catastrophes and to understand what they might jeopardize or interfere with. So if you understand how you can manage a problem and the order of processes, you'll be able to tackle the issue and assess what's going on and when you can go back to normal. This will also give your company peace of mind that if something were to happen, you'd be able to work efficiently and return to work as seamlessly as possible. How to make a business continuity plan. So what should a business continuity plan include? Well, it depends. It depends on the disaster. Ideally, you should have different plans tailored to each potential problem. How you deal with a network issue isn't going to be the same as how you react to an environmental issue, and the recovery process won't be the same either. So before you start putting anything together, narrow down the type and amount of plans you want to have in place. Overall, you're probably looking at creating a couple of business continuity plans to cover these potential issues. In ISO 27002, it mentions that the organization should ensure that an adequate organizational structure is in place to prepare for, mitigate, and respond to disruption, supported by personnel with the necessary responsibility, authority, and competence. Moving further, we're going to see 7.4, physical security. Let's understand first, what is physical security? Physical security measures are designed to protect buildings and safeguard the equipment inside. In short, they keep unwanted people out and give access to unauthorized individuals. While network and cybersecurity are important, preventing physical security breaches and threats is key to keeping your technology and data safe, as well as any staff or faculty that access to the building. Without physical security plans in place, your office or building is left, of course, open to criminal activity and liable for types of physical security threats, including theft, fraud, vandalism, or even accidents. Determining your risk level, in this case, before implementing physical security measures in your building or workplace, it's important to determine the potential risks and weaknesses in your current security. Detection is of the utmost importance in physical security. While it is impossible to prevent all intrusions or physical security breaches, having the right tools in place to detect and deal with intrusions minimizes the disruption to your business in the long run. To locate potential risk areas in your facility, first consider all your public entry points where people can enter and exit your facility. There's always a potential security risk. Baseline physical security control procedures, such as proper access control measures at key entry points, will help you manage who is coming and going and can alert you the potential intrusions. Now, once inside your facility, you want to look at how data or sensitive information is being secured and stored. Do you have a server room that needs added protection? Are desktop computers locked down and kept secure when nobody is in the office? Do employees have laptops that they take home with them each night? Even USB drives can become major threats in the workplace. List out all the potential risks in your building and then design security plans to mitigate the potential criminal activity. Before updating or creating now a physical security system, it's important also to understand the different roles technology and barriers play in your strategy. The smartest security strategies take the layered approach, adding physical security controls in addition to cyber security policies. This means building a complete system with strong physical security components to protect against the leading threats to your organization. The four main security technology components are deterrence. These are the physical security measures that keep people out or away from the space. Deterrent security components can be physical barriers, can be a wall or a door or a turnstile. Technology can also fall into this category. Access control systems and video security cameras deter unauthorized individuals from attempting to access the building. Or you can have a dog. You can have a guard guarding the perimeter. Can you make it in defense in 3 seconds? Because we can. Detection. Just because you have deterrence in space doesn't mean you're fully protected. Detection components of your physical security system help identify a potential security event or intruder. Sensors, alarms, and automatic notifications are all examples of physical security detections. Delay, there are certain security systems that are designed to slow intruders today down as they attempt to enter a facility or building. Access controls such as requiring a key card or mobile credential is one method of delay. Smart physical security strategies have multiple ways to delay intruders, which makes it easier to mitigate a breach before too much damage is caused. Response. These are the components that are in place once a breach or intrusion occurs. Examples of physical security response include communication systems, building lockdowns, and contacting emergency services or first responders. Together, these physical security components work to stop unwanted individuals from accessing spaces they shouldn't and notify the necessary teams to respond quickly and appropriately. So your physical security plans should address each of the components above, detailing the technology and process you'll use to ensure total protection and safety. On the monitoring hand now, on access control, securing your entries keeps unwanted people out and lets unauthorized users in. A modern keyless entry system is your first line of defense, of course. So having the best technology, if you can afford it, that is really essential. The main things to consider in terms of physical security are the types of credentials you choose if the system is on premises or cloud-based, and if the technology meets all your unique needs. When it comes to access methods, the most common are, of course, keycards, and we all use keycards even today. Surveillance tools. Surveillance is also very crucial to physical security control for buildings with multiple point of entry. The most common type, of course, of surveillance is physical security control is video cameras, video management systems, VMS are a great tool for surveillance, giving you visual insight into activity across your property. When adding surveillance to your physical security system, choose cameras that are appropriate for your facility. For example, exterior doors will need outdoor cameras that can withstand the elements. And for indoor cameras, consider the necessary viewing angles and mounting options your space requires. Another consideration for video surveillance systems is reporting and data to get the most out of the video surveillance. You'll want to be able to see both real-time footage as well as previously recorded activity. So in physical security control, examples of video surveillance data use cases include running audits on your system, providing video footage as evidence after a breach, using data logs in emergency situations, and applying usage analytics to improve the function and management of your system. Please have in mind that personal data in case of video surveillance comes into play here according to GDPR. So you might need some guidance from a lawyer, a legal point of view, especially when implementing cameras, when you're placing the cameras. Otherwise, you might end up with issues and a lot of problems. Traditionally, monitoring is done with some variation of physical security operations center. A SOC is a physical control room, usually equipped with some combination of monitors, screens, video cameras, and the like, where a professional can monitor all the company's security infrastructure. Security operating centers platforms operate at the assumption that someone is sitting in a dedicated room all day monitoring the appropriate screens. However, that's not how many modern offices are running today. They're often more streamlined and agile, with more companies turning to things like co-working spaces rather than fixed offices, or even operating remotely. For those more flexible offices, a more versatile tool is needed. And this is where, of course, cloud-based systems shine today. In a cloud-based system, your physical security infrastructure is connected to the cloud, and you can access it from anywhere in the world with a laptop or even your iOS or Android mobile app. Another advantage of this is the security software can send you cloud-based push notifications straight to your phone, so that you can be aware at all times if your space is breached. Turning you over to Carl. Carl.
Thanks, Andreas. A new area in the new version of 27002 is also configuration management. And this may be a surprise for a few companies, but essentially what configuration management is a consistent process for establishing the attributes of a product, and the product could be a server, a laptop, software in general, things like that. So the concept behind this is that, and again, quite a few companies simply aren't doing this, but the concept behind this is that there's consistency across the entire IT system. And then as well, configuration management is also composed of multiple areas. So first off, you have to identify the configuration, come to a conclusion that every platform is going to be baselined a certain way, have a certain configuration on it, and so on. And then moving on, we also at some point in time, there's going to be a change that needs to happen. And that's involved in the concept called change management. In my experiences with most companies, change management is not really being done effectively. But what change management is if a change needs to happen, there's a plenty of conversation, agreements, discussions, this new thing called backout plans, stuff like that, in case the change doesn't necessarily work. And then, of course, if there is a successful change, then we want to make sure that we are keeping track of what the change is and who approved it and why it was approved and so on. But also, more importantly, we have what's known as configuration audits. And configuration audits are when a change is made, you want to make sure that that change stayed made. Sometimes in some companies, the users have administrative control over their laptop, and they may decide that they disagreed with that change and they unchange it. As a part of that, you've now kind of corrupted your configuration management process. So it's not surprising that this is added into 27002 as a new requirement in order to create more structure within a company. But at the same time, I think that we'll have to adjust for that. So there are 5 key objectives for configuration management. and that everybody should remember this, provide accurate configuration information to support efficient and effective service management. Ensure throughout the life cycle of the product, whatever that product is, software, server, laptop, technology in general, that they're properly identified, controlled, and cared for, they're maintained. We also want to maintain the integrity of any configuration items and configurations themselves by requiring access permissions to control those services. Essentially, we have to take administrative rights away from individual users on their laptops. That's a perfect example of that. We want to conduct end-to-end management of services and configuration items and document all of these things in an auditable system of record. Obviously, you want to baseline servers, laptops, and everything, or how printers are configured, and et cetera, and document that somewhere. And in some cases, it may be even a good idea to simply image the entire server or laptop before deployments, and that is the baseline. And then we also want to document past, present, and possible future configuration in an accurate and thorough manner. And again, it is key to point out that all of this should be done in some sort of auditable system of record that allows for an auditor to see accurately the posture of the company in relation to configuration management. With that, I'll turn it over to Andreas for information deletion.
Slide 8 to 10, information deletion. I'm quite sure that a lot of people today are are interested to hear about information deletion, especially under the GDPR. So what is the right to get your data deleted? The right to get your data deleted is also known as the right to erasure. This is under GDPR regulation, of course. And it's really fun now that we can see that ISO 27001 embedded all these new guidelines now to help about GDPR. So you can ask an organization that holds data about you to delete that data. In some circumstances, though, they might just then do so. You may sometimes hear this called the right to be forgotten. So when can I ask my data to be deleted? The right only applies in the following circumstances. The organization no longer needs your data for the original reason they collected or used for. And after you have canceled, for example, your gym membership, the gym no longer needs to keep details of your name, of your address, of your age and health conditions. Or you agreed to take part in a market research study and now you don't want to. You have objected to the use of your data and your interests outweigh those of those organizations using it. You have objected to the use of your data for direct marketing purposes. The organization has collected or used your data unlawfully. You use social media or gaming app as a child. The law gives children special protection, especially online, because they may be less aware of the risks and consequences of giving their data to organizations. So even if you're now an adult, you have a right to have your data erased if it was collected from you as a child. How do I ask for my data to be deleted? Well, you should contact the organization and let them know what personal data you want them to erase. You don't have to ask a specific person. You can contact any part of the organization with your request. There's even in the terms and conditions or in the privacy policy of every organization that they're online, the data protection email. So you can actually contact directly the DPO of the organization and request that. You can make your request verbally or in writing. We recommend you follow up any verbal request in writing because this will allow you to explain your concern, give evidence, and explain what you want to happen. You will also have clear proof of your actions if you decide to challenge the organization's response. And there are no specific words that you must be, by the way, to help you exercise your right to erasure. What should the organization do in this case? The organization should delete your data unless an exception in data protection laws applies. They should also tell anyone else that they have shared your data with about to erasure. They can only refuse to do this if it will be impossible or involve disproportionate effort. If you ask, they must also tell you that they have shared your data with other organizations. If your data has been made public online, such as social networks, forums, or websites, then the organization must take reasonable steps to inform the people with responsibility for those sites to erase links or copies of that data. When can the organization now say no, erasing your data? The organization can refuse to erase your data when keeping your data is necessary for reasons of freedom of expression and information. This includes journalism or academic, artistic, and literary purposes. When the organization is legally obliged to keep hold of your data, such as to comply with financial or other regulations. When the organization is carrying out a task in the public interest, or when exercising their official authority, when keeping your data is necessary for establishing, exercising, or defending legal claims. Also, the right to erasure does not apply to special category data in the following circumstances: when keeping hold of your data is necessary for reasons of public health, of course, in the public interest. When keeping your data is necessary for purposes of preventative or occupational medicine, or for medical diagnosis, for the provision of health or social care. Now, how long should the organization take to delete those data? How long they usually take to respond back to you? Organization has 1 calendar month. This is according to GDPR regulations. Of course, to respond to your request, in certain circumstances, they may need extra time to consider your request and can take up to an extra month or 2, but they have to reply this back to you. So if they are going to do this, they should let you know immediately or within at least 1 month that they need more time, and the reasons why they require such longer time to do so. The organization might need you to prove your identity. However, they should only ask you for just enough information to be sure you are the right person. And if they do this, then the 1 month time period to respond to your request begins from when they receive this additional information. Now, what to do if the organization does not respond or you are dissatisfied with the outcome? So your informations are not deleted, my data are not deleted. So if you're unhappy with how the organization has handled your request, you should first raise a concern with them and give them the opportunity to resolve this matter. Having done so, if you remain dissatisfied, you can make a complaint to your country's personal data commissioner. You can also seek to enforce your rights through the courts. Have in mind that this might take years to be resolved. And if you decide to do this, we strongly advise you to seek independent legal advice first. Turning you over to Carl.
Thanks, Andreas. Much like 8.10, 8.11 is dealing with data masking, and obviously there's some GDPR connections to this. So data masking should be used in accordance with an organization's policy on access control and other areas in order to protect PII. The whole concept of data masking is that we're taking sensitive data, and in the example we have some social security numbers and so on, and we still need to use this data, but in a non-production environment, possibly for testing or development of changes for whatever changes are going to go to the production environment, and using proper change management in doing so. But we don't want actual sensitive data in the production environment. It could get corrupted, it could be compromised, maybe there's less security in the development environment and so on. So what we want to do is mask that data in such a way that we can still make use of the data, but it's not the exact same data. So there's obviously different ways of doing data masking. You could do character substitution, you could do anonymization, things like that. In this case, we have an example of substitution from the employee ID of 1111 for John Smith to 2874. And then we're also masking the John Smith Social Security number with some X's for the first two sections. The challenges, though, of data masking have to be fully understood. So for example, if we mask the data, we have to make sure that if that masked data is compromised, and the being compromised could be through breach, it could be through a hostile insider, it could be simply somebody had something on a USB thumb drive and it was an accident and that thumb drive got lost. We have to make sure that that data can't be unmasked. So it's pretty much one-way masking to prevent that. I'm really not surprised that this was added in. Again, there's a lot of, with all the additional stuff with 27002, there's a lot of GDPR connections, and this really only made sense. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Andreas for data leakage prevention.
Thank you, Carl. Data leakage prevention measures should be applied to systems, networks, and other devices that process, store, or transmit sensitive information. So DLP helps companies identify confidential data and investigate, document metadata in transit, especially to make sure that no confidential information hidden in this area is leaving the company network. It's really amazing today what DLP solutions can actually do, can actually track even specific words in documents. So it's pretty amazing. The data leakage prevention now security needs to assure that employees in the organizations are aware of employee and security policies and tools involved in the process. One of the precautionary measures is to ensure that confidential data is not sent outside the organization network. So today, modern data leakage prevention software offers application monitoring, email monitoring, malware protection, and of course, the most advanced is the user access control. The data leakage prevention solutions grants privilege to the administrators to have business rules in place. This will categorize the confidential and sensitive information and bars and access to it by unauthorized users. The data leakage prevention tools such as ForcePoint or Symantec today, DLP solutions, provides the user to find out the sensitive data, and also the users are at risk in a matter of just a few seconds. There are three main DLP solutions. We have the network-based DLP solutions, and this protects the data in transit layer. DLP network solution is installed on network edges to monitor travel data to and from the company network. So it's monitoring activity, which includes email traffic, IM chats, SSL traffic, and much more. These solutions should first be configured according to the predefined information disclosure policy to differentiate confidential data from ordinary data. Storage-based DLP solution, this monitors data at rest status. It works by checking how data is stored on storage servers and whether it adheres to the company's secure storage policy. It sends a warning to the administrator when a policy violation occurs. It can even send an SMS or even an email to the administrator. Endpoint DLP solution. This monitors individual user devices like laptops, desktops, and tablets for actions that may lead to data leakage, such as copying files to USB or CD or DVD media, printing confidential data on paper, or attaching files to emails, or uploading files to social media websites, FTP sites, cloud storage, and so on. Endpoint DLP solutions can also be configured to block illegal user actions actively and warn the administrator immediately after each policy violation. And turning you now over to Carl.
Thank you, Andres. So a new area for the new version 8.16 monitoring activities. The interesting thing about this is the control actually states network systems and applications should be monitored for anomalous behavior and appropriate actions taken to evaluate potential information security incidents. The intent behind this is that you should know what's going on in your network, what your users are doing, and so on. What the new control does not indicate, though, is how you do that. Obviously, that's every company's different, but it seems fairly obvious that they would like you to implement some sort of SIM or SIEM, however you want to use a term. And the idea behind this is everything has the capability of being logged now, printers, servers, routers, firewalls, and so on. And the idea is to take all these different data points and consolidate them into a single pane of glass, which allows for a much more efficient use of the humans that are reviewing this monitoring activity. So we certainly want to be efficient in this area, and it is a requirement to monitor your environment. The question I think is going to be is if that's possible in all cases. And again, this has a lot of correlation with GDPR. So moving on, 8.23, web filtering. And the control is access to external websites should be managed to reduce exposure to malicious content. This has actually been around for quite some time. 88% of security breaches occur due to human error. Most of that revolves around phishing or going to a malicious website. So what we really want to do is have some sort of solution that allows a company to connect get information from the internet without having an end user's device directly connected to whatever internet location there is. One thing we do want to point out, though, is that the intent behind this is that there's something else besides a firewall. Some people believe that a firewall is a preventative device, and in some cases it is. We can certainly have smart firewalls, next-gen firewalls that do a lot of things, and some do have some web filtering capability, but that is not the intent behind this, because there are ways around that. So clearly it looks like that the intent is to deploy some sort of web proxy server that allows a user to make a request to the internet. Then that proxy server performs that function for the end user. Easily to solve this problem, it's not a big deal. But some other abilities for web filtering is it really helps prevent shadow IT and establishes more of a filtering concept to help protect the company from possibly inappropriate locations or locations that have no business use that are being accessed a lot, or even locations that are totally innocent but consume a lot of bandwidth, which increases the cost to the company. So web filtering certainly has the capability to do that. And moving on to 8.28, secure coding. And the control here is secure coding principles should be applied to software development. And much like web filtering, they don't really go into great detail into what secure coding principles are. They just want you to have secure coding principles. So clearly, what they're trying to get at is review OWASP Top 10 and any other guidance that OWASP may have for secure coding. And the intent is to ensure software is written securely, which reduces the number of potential information security vulnerabilities in the software. Now, there certainly is a GDPR connection with this as well, because there's a concept called privacy by design in GDPR. So that certainly should be something that we should look at. Some of the areas that could come into play for lack of secure coding could be insufficient logging or monitoring. You could have injection flaws. I'm sure everybody's heard of a SQL injection attack, things like that. You could have the accidental exposure of sensitive data. changing maybe a URL a little bit. Does that expose other data for a different client? It could be anything. Possibly using libraries as a part of software development that was not actually coded by the company, but that library is a portion of whatever software product's being developed, and it turns out that library is vulnerable. So then your product would also inherit that vulnerability. Obviously, we have other areas of cross-site scripting or maybe broken authentication. And realistically, the end solution of all of this is, if you're developing software, your company's developing software, is just go to the OWASP top 10 and follow those guidelines, and then test continuously as a part of the development process, as opposed to waiting until the product has been released into the wild. And with that, our next slide is actually, we wanted to spend a little bit of time on this slide in general, because of areas of consideration. So for example, the first thing that Andreas and several other auditors in our circles have discussed is, how will an updated 27002 interact with a not updated 27001? This is an interesting thing to consider. When we have requirements in 27002 that can't be directly mapped to something in 27001. My personal opinion is that this will be an interesting conversation with the auditor that will need to happen. But at this point, I'm not really sure what the intention is. Andreas, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, because I actually received some questions regarding this matter, and the questions I got is, when should all these organizations transition to this new control set? So let's be clear. Today, only ISO 27002 version 2022 has been released. It's actually published now. So with ISO 27001 2022 expected later this year, I'm not actually, I'm going to be really honest. I don't know the exact date. It's been mentioned that the release is going to be during October. So once the new standard is published, we expect there to be a transition period of around probably a year or a year and a half to allow the changes to be implemented. It's also likely that the certification bodies will need some time to interpret and adapt the new standard and changes to its control set as well. In that case, many certification bodies may not offer assessments against the updated standard for a period probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 5 or 6 months or even a year after the standard is published. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and then the bodies, or the companies that are going through a certification process currently, it may be interesting. So I think, personally, I think there will be some interesting conversations with the auditors, and somebody will work something out. I'm sure companies that are going through the process right now don't want to wait until the new standard is out. There may be some business reasons to be certified sooner rather than later. All right, so we also have some areas that in relation to the new controls, so we have all 11 of them listed there. Some areas your company may already likely be doing. So for example, threat intelligence. If you have a next-gen firewall, you probably are getting threat intelligence already through the firewall. The question is are you monitoring the firewall to understand you're getting the threat intelligence? Companies may already be connected to law enforcement agencies or government cybersecurity agencies to gather threat intelligence through that, or maybe even signing up to news lists and gathering threat intelligence that way. So the standard doesn't really say that you have to do it a specific way, just that you have to do it. And in relation to physical security, I don't know of any company nowadays that doesn't do some form of physical security if they have physical offices. I mean, nobody wants their laptops and computers and printers to be stolen, so I'm sure there's locks on doors and other physical security aspects that need to be in place. So these are areas that companies may already be doing. Andreas, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually having a question that's coming to me. People are asking, what does, if I'm currently doing an ISO 27001 today, this will affect me. So what should I do? And what I'm currently working towards ISO 27001, and I've seen some sort of a small panic. So until the new ISO 27001 standard is released and certification bodies begin to offer assessments against this new control set, ISO 27001 implementation will not be conducted with the existing controls in mind. This means that if you're currently working on towards certification, you will not need to change your approach. You don't need to worry about that. Additionally, the control changes are only moderate. When the new ISO 27001 standard is released, and let's cross our finger, we see the release this October, you will
Hopefully
likely,
soon.
yeah, hopefully, yeah. There are millions of people waiting for this release, I guess. You will likely only need to make changes to probably few or some certain documentation. We do not anticipate that many technical changes will require. But then again, we haven't seen it, so I cannot make any promises. Just crossing our fingers that we'll see this release of ISO 27001 2022, sorry, hopefully this year. So don't worry, you can continue your business working towards the ISO 27001 certification for your organization. So you don't need to panic about it. Just don't worry. Everything is going to be just fine. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. And then to add to that, I think having said that, if your company would fall under GDPR, understand with the new standard and GDPR, there's a lot of connection in there. So while it may not matter for
Yeah, absolutely.
27001, it will matter for GDPR.
Yeah, because we've seen some of the guidelines that they're now mentioning in 27002 that they're actually following that direction of GDPR, and actually a lot of people that they have actually seen it today, they're quite really happy.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This is really good. Yeah.
So there's also some areas that may have no impact on a client's company. So for example, if you don't develop software, then secure coding is probably not going to be an issue. If you're entirely remote and almost entirely cloud-based, then physical security may not be an issue. And same thing with data masking. If you're not collecting sensitive information from end users, then likely this won't matter.
Yeah.
So that there is some benefits to just how a company is run. However, in relation to the new standard, there's also some areas that absolutely will have an impact on various companies. Obviously, we talked about data leakage prevention, or DLP. This can be expensive, to put it bluntly. I've seen DLP implementation take 9 to 12 months long because of the extensive planning that has to happen and how to execute this. Because an improperly deployed DLP could actually hurt the company. It can shut down productivity with the users because it's overly restrictive. And then there's also the standpoint of data loss prevention or data leakage prevention, not actually recognizing some of the data that is sensitive. So intellectual property of the company itself. It may recognize social security numbers, but it doesn't recognize the patented or the secret technology that whatever the company deals with. So there's, in relation to DLP, it certainly is expensive. It can be expensive, that is. It certainly requires effective planning execution. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. If there's a quick DLP implementation, I immediately would suggest if it's being done properly, because quick and DLP don't go together. We also have information deletion. Obviously a GDPR connection, the planning of how you're going to do that, and the ability to scale. So for example, when GDPR was released, I want to say there was something like 4 million requests to Google that the data subject owners requested of Google. Can a company implement a procedure to delete information, and can that company scale that process to delete, say, 1,000 people at one time, or 10,000? That's certainly something to consider on how to do that. And there is technology that can help to make this process a little easier, but it's still a lot of planning that needs to happen. Obviously, we have business continuity. If a company has never performed business continuity before, disaster recovery, things like that, that can be a unique experience. It's super important to understand that business continuity is a lifestyle. It's not a one and done where we do something once and then we don't ever have to worry about it again. It's a lifestyle. The environment changes for every company. There's no company on the planet that anticipated COVID-19 happening, and that's a perfect example of the importance of it.
Just to add something here regarding business continuity, Car, in the international maritime organizations, most probably we'll see business continuity next year to be mandatory. So it's really, really important. It's coming into play. So certification for business continuity is going to be probably the next trend in the next year as well.
Oh, I imagine, yeah.
It's
especially
mandatory. Yeah, it's going to be mandatory. They won't be able to do business without business continuity. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised it's not already mandatory, given that the international maritime with ships and boats and hurricanes.
I'm surprised as well. I'm surprised as well because if you actually review the cybersecurity on board ships, actually there are plenty of guidelines as well for that. You will see that they're using the framework of ISO 27001 and GDPR as well, but it's not mandatory. So they don't want to become certified. So next year, when every single ship is going to be a single entity, it's going to be mandatory for them to be certified also for ISO 27001 and ISO 22301 for business continuity management. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we also have web filtering. Honestly, web filtering is easy to implement. It's a low-cost situation. You could deploy a web filtering solution and just make some minor changes. If it's properly done, the users won't really know that it even happened. So that would be an area that I see companies being affected, but that's not a detailed challenge like data loss prevention. And then also we have configuration management. Configuration management can be solved with technology, but does require planning, generally in the areas of processes and approvals. And then, of course, we need to have some sort of singular auditable source of truth for anything we're doing in relation to configuration management. But I don't think that's overly extensive. Andreas, do you have any other comments you want to add before we move on to questions?
No, I'm okay.
All right. And I see we're over time, but I was notified we do have permission for another 5 minutes roughly for questions, if there are any, and I do apologize for going over.
Thank you very much, Andreas and Carl. It was a pleasure having you as presenters for this webinar. Just a reminder to our audience, PECB offers training and certification courses, which will show your dedication in implementing and managing information security and privacy related frameworks, amongst others. And most importantly, you'll get recognized worldwide. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and take some time to answer some of the questions from the attendees. The first question is, if a company is fully remote, what do they list on the certificate as locations in scope?
Ooh, that's a good question, Andreas. What do you think?
Can you please repeat the question one more time, Vanna, please?
Yes, if a company is fully remote, what do they list on the certificate as location in their scope?
Well, it depends actually where the infrastructure is, because if they're fully remote, obviously they're using a remote domain controller enabled to authenticate themselves, and they probably have a remote file server or a remote email server. So this doesn't mean that they cannot be certified for ISO 27001 and ISO 27002. It doesn't matter if they are remotely, because they can even use what is called IP telephony in their house as well. So they can be certified for ISO. So to mention the location, they can refer to the location of their infrastructure. So where are they hosting their servers? Where they're currently located their servers? Have in mind that these sometimes can create a little bit of a hassle if they don't do that, because some organizations today, because of COVID, and they went remotely because of COVID, they started using cloud solutions of Microsoft. Again, this doesn't mean that you cannot be certified. You can mention that you're actually using cloud services from Microsoft, and you can be certified with any ISO you wish, especially for 27001, 22301 for business continuity. So it doesn't matter if you are working remotely. It doesn't mean that you're using cloud solutions. You still can mention that you are using these kind of solutions, and you can be certified. Actually, it's much more easier to become certified if you're using cloud solutions by Microsoft. Makes the job more easier for auditors to implement ISO 27001.
Thank you, Andreas. The next question is configuration management a new control in the latest version of the ISO 27002 standard?
Yes, it is. It's I forgot what number is, 8 something, but yes, it is. Configuration management is a new required control in 27002.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, should the statement of applicability be updated with the new controls from the ISO 27002?
Andreas, your thoughts?
Definitely at some point when ISO 27002 comes into play, for sure you will need to update the statement of applicability. But at this point, no.
I agree with Andreas on that as well. So update the SOA when it becomes time to update, but
Correct.
Until then, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, because remember, we need some transition period around probably a couple of months to allow these changes to be implemented. So you can leave the statement of applicability as it is at this stage.
And just to be clear, obviously part of the issue is that 27002 and 27001 were not released, updated and released simultaneously, which I think more than one person is probably providing that input to them on the confusion that they have generated. Obviously not maliciously, but they probably could have thought about it a little bit better before they did that.
Yeah, and still that ISO 27002 2022, as we know now, it's expected this year, but we're not sure. So I'm not making any promises to anyone that you will actually see a release in October, because we already mentioned October. We probably, or there's a chance that we might not see a release during this October. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see what's going to be the outcome.
Okay, so due to time limitations, this will be our last question for today. When should you think business continuity starts? Before or after you have done your risk assessment, risk treatment actions?
Andreas?
When do you have to do the business continuity planning? First of all, you need to have you have to define, first of all, the risk assessment. You need a risk assessment enabled to do a business continuity plan. If you don't have a risk assessment, if you don't assess the threats, the vulnerabilities, there is no point to do a business continuity planning. So I always suggest to organizations, first of all, sort the current infrastructure, sort your current organization internally, and then move to business continuity, because it takes it's really take a long time to implement business continuity, because have in mind that in some cases you need to have identical infrastructure in another location. And sometimes this is a huge burden, although today we've seen a lot of organizations moving into cloud or have hybrid solutions. But then again, it's really, really costly. So I will always suggest first the business continuity planning to be later on, a second stage or even a third stage. It's preferable to have a risk assessment in place before continuing with your business continuity planning.
And I agree with Andreas on that as well. When we do business continuity, anything business continuity related, we always do a risk assessment first. Quite often, just simply doing the risk assessment, you'll uncover something. It could be technology related, could be a process, who knows, that if you didn't uncover it and then you went straight to business continuity planning, that will force you to change your business continuity plan anyways. But yeah, to Andreas's point, you can't really do a business continuity, create a business continuity plan without first understanding the potential risks to the company, so you can create the plan.
Exactly. There's also a chance that if you're actually doing it now, there's a huge chance to inherit all these problems during the business continuity planning. So you will create a business continuity planning, and at the end of the day, you'll have to start over again, because some of the processes, some of the procedures, some of the technology that you didn't do a risk assessment. Okay, and to do a risk assessment today, a decent risk assessment, you need first of all to do a vulnerability assessment. You need to identify the vulnerabilities. You need to identify the threats. Okay, you need definitely a penetration testing enabled to find out more information on what are the current infrastructure exploitations of your organizations. So if you don't do all these things, you cannot have a decent risk assessment. So eventually, when you're going to design a business continuity plan, you're going to inherit all these problems in your business continuity planning. And therefore, you start over again, and you're going to waste time, you're going to waste resources, you're going to waste a lot of money trying to implement it. So it's better to do all these things step by step.
Thank you very much, Andreas and Carl, for presenting today, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Please be informed that this session is recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube channel along with the slides of the presentation. Thank you all, and looking forward to having you in our upcoming webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Have a nice day.